The Boxcar Children. Chapter 7, A Big Meal from Little Onions. The next morning, Jessie and Henry talked about the queer noise. They did not tell Violet or Benny. "What do you think it was?" asked Jessie. "Do you think it was a rabbit?" "I don't know," said Henry, "but I think someone was in the woods. I am glad we weren't hurt. Someone must have stepped on a stick and made it crack." "What shall we do?" asked Jessie. "Nothing," said Henry. "Watch is a good watchdog. He loves us now, and if anyone tries to hurt us, Watch will take care of us. He would do more than growl, but after this, we must not let Benny go into the woods alone." "I'll keep Benny and Violet with me all the time," said Jessie. "Good," said Henry, "and keep Watch with you all the time, too." "Good morning, Benny. Time to get up. Today you must build something for me out of stones." "What is it?" asked Benny eagerly. "I'm not going to tell you," said Henry, laughing. "You build it just as Jessie tells you, and you will see." Henry was eager to begin work, that he ran all the way into town. The doctor came to the door and smilingly looked at him over from head to toe. "My mother will tell you what to do today," said the doctor. "She wants you to work in her garden." Mrs. Moore, the doctor's mother, had a sweet face and looked very kind. "Good morning, Henry," she said. "Do you know how to thin out vegetables?" "Oh, yes," said Henry. "I like to work in a vegetable garden." "I haven't had much time to take care of my garden," said Mrs. Moore. "There, see that?" She pulled out a carrot. It had to come out, for it was much too near the other carrots. "Yes, I see," said Henry. He began to thin out the carrots. Mrs. Moore watched him as he pulled out some of the little carrots and put them in a pile. He left the other carrots to grow. Then he began on the turnips. "You're a good worker," said Mrs. Moore. "I see that," she smiled at Henry. "You may thin out all of these vegetables." Then she went into the house and left Henry alone. He worked all morning. He thinned out the carrots, the turnips, and the little onions. The mill bell rang at noon, but Henry did not hear them. He still worked out in the hot sun. Then he saw Mrs. Moore looking at him. "You have worked long enough now," she said. "You may come again this afternoon." "What shall I do with the vegetables I pulled?" said Henry. "Oh, I don't want them," said Mrs. Moore. "Just leave them in a pile." Would you mind if I take them?" he asked. "No, indeed. Do you have chickens?" Then without waiting for an answer, she went right on. "You have done great work here. Here is $1. Henry said thank you and was glad he did not have to answer about the chickens. When Mrs. Moore went into the house, he took some of the little carrots and turnips and onions. If he had looked up, he would have seen Mrs. Moore in the window watching him, but he did not look up. He was too eager to get to the store and order some meat. When he arrived at the boxcar, Benny told him, "The building is done. I helped with it." The building was a fireplace made of flat stones. "Benny did a lot of work," said Jessie. "He carried stones and found wood for the fire." The fireplace was a very good one. The children in Watch had made a hole in the front of a big rock between two trees. Flat stones were laid on the floor of this hole and around the sides. More big stones were put up to keep out the wind. Jessie had found a heavy wire in the dump and put the big kettle on it and tied the ends of the wire to the two trees. The kettle hung over the fireplace and the fire was laid. Beside the fireplace was a big wood pile. "Fine, fine," said Henry. "You have done so well. Now see what I have." The girls were delighted with the meat and the little vegetables. With Henry's knife, they cut the meat into pieces. Then they filled the kettle with water from the fountain and put the meat into it with a tin plate for a cover. Henry started the fire and it burned well at once. Jessie cut up the vegetables and washed them in the brook. "I'll put them in after the meat is cooked a while," she said. Soon the water began to boil and the stew began to smell good. Watch sat down and looked at it. He sniffed hungrily and barked and barked. The children sat around the fireplace eating bread and milk. Now and then Jessie stirred the stew with a big spoon. "It will make a good meal," said Henry. "Keep it boiling and do not leave it. When I come home tonight, I'll bring you some salt. And whatever you do, don't get on fire." Violet pointed to the pitcher and teacups that she had filled with water. "That's to put on Benny or Watch if he should get on fire." Henry laughed and went happily on his way. He wished he could stay and smell the stew boiling, but he thought he ought to work, so he went back to Dr. Moore's house. He was very happy when Dr. Moore said, "Do you want to clean up the garage?" The garage was not in very good order. Dr. Moore laughed when he saw Henry look around for a broom. I must go out now, said Dr. Moore. You just clean this place up. Henry began at once. First, he opened all the boxes. On the biggest box, he painted the words tools with a long-handled brush and a can of paint he had found. On another box, he painted nails. Then he picked up over the things and put the tools in the toolbox and the nails in the nail box. This was fun for Henry because he liked to get things in order. Henry found a lot of nails that were bent and covered with rust. He put them in his pocket. I'll ask the doctor for these bent nails, he said to himself. They are no good to him, but they are fine for me. I can use even every old nail I can get. Then he washed the floor and washed the paintbrushes. When Dr. Moore came home, he found Henry putting brushes, paint cans, and other things on the shelf. My, he cried. He looked at the garage and laughed and laughed. He laughed until his mother came out to see what he was laughing at. Look, Mother, he said. Look at those tools. Look at the shelf. Look at my hammers. 1, 2, 3, 4 hammers. Your hammers, my two other hammers. They were all lost. Can you use a hammer, Henry? Yes, indeed I can, cried Henry. Take one, said Dr. Moore. You found them all. Oh, thank you, said Henry. He showed the doctor the bent nails and was told that he could have those. He could hardly wait to get home and start because he was so eager to show Benny and his sisters his new hammer and nails. Tomorrow will be Sunday, said Dr. Moore. Will you come again the next day? Oh, yes, replied Henry, who had lost all track of the days. The cherries must be picked, he said. He looked at Henry in a queer way. We could use a number of cherry pickers if there are any as careful as you. Could you? Said Henry. Well, I'll come. So the three said goodbye and Henry started for home. He had another $1, a pocket full of old nails, a hammer, and the pile of vegetables that he left at noon. On the way home, he brought some salt. When he arrived at the boxcar, he began to smell a delicious smell. Onions, he shouted, running up to the kettle. I do like the smell of onions. I like the turnips best, said Violet. Jessie took off the cover carefully and stirred in the salt, and Henry sniffed the brown stew. It was boiling and boiling. A ladle of all things, cried Henry. Where did you get it? I found it in a teacup in the dump, said Jessie. We used a long stick for a handle and tied it to the cup with a piece of wire. It makes a fine ladle. She ladled out the stew into plates and bowls and put a spoon in each one. Oh, said Benny, I am so hungry I must eat my supper. The meat was well cooked and the vegetables were delicious. Violet passed her plate for more turnips. I'd like more onions, said Henry. All the children ate until they could eat no more. That was the best meal I ever ate, said Jessie. Me too, said Violet. I have time tonight to make Benny's cart, remarked Henry. We'll make a cart. Will you make it with wheels? Asked Benny. Yes, with your wheels, answered Henry, but you must cart stones in it when I get it all done. Yes, said Benny, I can cart stones or rocks or anything. Tomorrow will be Sunday and I can stay at home, Henry said. Do you think it will be all right, Jessie, to build a dam for a swimming pool on Sunday? Yes, I do, said Jessie. We are making the swimming pool so that we can keep clean. Henry began happily to hammer out the bent nails with his new hammer. Soon he had some good nails to work with. You and I will go and find some boards, Benny, he said. Come on. Soon the boys came back with some boards from the dump. Henry sat down and began to make the cart. He could not see very well because it was getting dark, and there was no moon out tonight. But at last the cart was done, and he gave it to Benny. Thank you, said Benny. After his sisters had admired the cart, Benny pulled it around just for fun. Then Henry put it in the boxcar for the night. Henry said to Jessie, I hope we do not hear that queer noise again tonight. I hope not, too, said Jessie. Then she laughed. Look at Benny. He had gone to sleep with his hands in his cart. Henry laughed, too, but he laughed at himself because he was going to sleep with his new hammer under his pillow. The end.